But prayer, to really be full and active and more efficacious, has to be followed by action.
How many likes, posts, hearts, comments, or whatever did that friend have that every one of those people could have done something, tangible. And if even a few had done something tangible, then that changes things a lot and it breaks that wall down.
And today's topic is going to be a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but I think that it merits talking about because it affects everybody. Mm-hmm. As a Catholic dad, you, by nature of the term dad, you have children, and children are going to be influenced by things that are going on in their lives and what's going on in their school and their friends, in their homes. And a lot of people are affected by what's happening outside in the, in the greater community where you get on the news, you hear these things that are happening with celebrities. And so today in podcast time, it is June 15th, and I guess it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, there was a back-to-back unfortunate reporting of 2 suicides by some very famous and prominent people, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain. And then you go back and you look at, the other, like when Robin Williams, I think that's the one that kind of gets, in my mind, whenever you start thinking of, all these celebrities that are, committing suicide, I know that there's other ones besides that, but it's like, really to me, it hits hard with Robin Williams, when Robin Williams
I hadn't thought about that for a while, but yeah, you're right.
And then, then you fast forward to these, and then you can go to like Kurt Cobain, and I don't have the list. I didn't really research this topic, nor did I feel like we really needed to research this topic, although it probably would be good to have some statistics maybe to look at suicide rates and in what demographic are they more prominent.
So one of the things that's come up because of all these celebrities is that the incident rate is increasing. So I did see an article on that, and I read it or scanned it, as I usually do. There was 2 kind of key points there. One was, yes, per the CDC kind of government tracking, suicide rates have been increasing. They said that some of that could be also because it's becoming much more, not prominent, but there's less of a stigma, I guess is what I'm trying to say, around it. And so people are more willing to mark cause of death as suicide, where, previous decades they may have put another cause of death, especially for like a private person. Okay. So where now the coroner would mark it as a suicide, maybe they would have previously said, we'll put it down as a heart attack so that, we don't have to share with friends and family or something like that.
Or just like death by a lethal injection of pills or whatever. Not injection, but ingestion. Yeah. But it was like maybe they would say it was an accidental overdose versus a suicide.
Right, exactly, something like that. So, but I don't know if that attends to it.
What I was kind of thinking is it's terrible that we're having to have these discussions, but like the school shootings, right? They're happening more and more frequently,
right?
And it's almost like you're saying is like once the there's a study that talks about like if you've got a group of people, it's not mob mentality, but it's kind of like on that where it's like if you have a group of people. There's a certain point where none of them will really do anything. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to throw a rock at that window and break the window. Yep. But the minute somebody does throw a rock and breaks the window, then it makes it easier for the next person to throw the rock and break the window. Yep. And it's almost like that. And one of the arguments that I heard about the school shootings, that was part of it. It was like, well, now that somebody has done that, right. And they did it so, like in, to say Columbine, and kind of like really put it on the map, well, then it makes it easier for these other people to do it. Well, It's not so shocking anymore.
Right. No,
actually, the Catholic Stuff guys made had a podcast where they talked about, it was actually about horror movies.
Yeah, I saw that one. I listened to that one too.
And it was like, as a horror fan.
Right. I thought about you the whole podcast. Yeah. That's hilarious.
I have to, say that I'm convicted about that because I look at horror movies today and I'm like, these are stupid.
Yep.
And why are they stupid? Because I've been, what do they call it? Escalation? I think, but he called it escalation.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to get that shock value,
right?
You have to escalate to the next step.
Right.
Well, when you've got these horrible things happening, to get the shock value, if that's what you're going for,
right,
say in a school shooting or whatever, you have to escalate it.
That's absolutely right.
And so and I'm just thinking to bring it back to the suicide thing, I don't know what's going through people's heads.
Yep.
So I thought that today what we could talk about is, from a faith perspective. Mm-hmm. Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about suicide in the Catholic Church and what we feel about that. I'm not going to speak as an authority on the Catholic Church. I would encourage you to reach out to your parish priest.
Right.
I'm just saying, totally skip researching on the internet or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Go talk to your local priest if this is a concern, because I know the Catholic Stuff guys did a podcast on, can you have a funeral, a Catholic funeral for someone who committed suicide? So reference that podcast, go talk to your priest. I'm not going to talk about that. I am going to say what we do know is that in the mind of somebody who feels that the only way out is to commit suicide, there's something going on there, and we recognize that you can't... never can we make a judgment call on the state of anybody's soul, because we don't know what's going on.
That's right.
And this is one of them.
Yep. No, and I think that's the, we had the same conversation with Father Rafa several years ago when we lost Connor, and it was the same. It was like, you put your faith in a loving God that, has compassion and shows that he has compassion. And, because there was an analogy there in terms of, stillborn children and miscarriages and what happens to a child after or before they're baptized even, and all these kind of things. And so, we get, don't go internet researching on that.
Yeah. So I do have a personal, one of my friends committed suicide in college, and that was a very difficult time for us. He was in a fraternity, and so just the whole fraternity was
devastated.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for being there and trying to be there for somebody as much as you can. So if there's I guess two things that I would want to talk about is how can we be there for people, but also on the other hand that we can't beat ourselves up if something like this, God forbid, happens to us in our lives. You can't beat yourself up and say that I didn't do a good enough job of being a friend or whatever. But one of the things that I see is so we're Facebook, we're social, we have friends, and you can look on Facebook at any given day, and you can see that somebody's having a hard time. And what do you normally do whenever you see somebody that might not even be a close acquaintance, but maybe it is a close acquaintance? What do you do whenever you see they're having a hard time that day?
So I'd be honest with you, my feed is mostly news on Facebook. So I don't know if that would be the place that I would see that or notice it. I mean, I get the pictures from the friends and the people, and the one family in particular watching the flood kind of things and supporting people and texting on that. But to the level that you're talking about, I don't know if I would pick up on that. To be honest, I would see that on my social feeds. So
I'm a Facebook scroller. I mean, I'm one of these that I'll grab the phone and I'll just start scrolling, and it's not a good trait. I'm kind of convicting myself of this bad habit. But, I will scroll through Facebook and I will find, I'll stop on something that looks interesting. I'll stop on those, when it's not a share. I don't usually stop on shares. I'll scroll past those. But, I will try to notice when somebody is going through a hard time or having a hard situation. And I guess what I'm getting to is when you click on that, the comments are usually, something to the effect of, sorry to hear that. I'll pray for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's a very noble gesture. But prayer, to really be full and active and more efficacious has to be followed by action. And I think that's a lot of times in a lot of these tragedies that happen, I saw one of these memes go around after one of the last school shootings where it was like school shooting, and it was a circle. It was the recycle arrow. School shooting, and it has an arrow down. Hope, thoughts, and prayers.
Yep.
And then there's an arrow. Nothing gets done, and then it goes back to school shooting.
Yeah.
And the basically the message there is thoughts and prayers don't work.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that number one, we don't know what God does with prayers, so I would caution very much to say stop saying you're going to pray for somebody or stop praying for somebody only.
Yep. But
there is something to be said for action as well, prayer and action. And so I had a very recent, and it was actually before Anthony Bourdain committed suicide, but it was after Kate Spades, and I was seeing some of the feeds, and I was like, we live in a very connected world.
Yeah.
We're more connected now than ever.
Yep.
You can pick up your phone and you don't have to call them. You could text them.
Right.
And you don't even need their number, because if you're friends on Facebook, you can just send them a message through Messenger.
Yeah.
And so I started taking it on myself to reach out to people if I see them, just having a hard time, saying, hey, is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
And then I kind of convicted myself. Oh my gosh! So Siri thinks that I'm asking her a question. That's
helping out.
That's hilarious. Yeah, Siri's looking to help out. But it was like a step further, because it's like when if there's anything that this person committing suicide has said, is that I'm not going to ask you for help.
Right. I'm
not going to tell you if there's something you can do for me.
Right.
So it's like after all of that and just on reflecting that, I realized it's like, I think the last thing we need to say to somebody is, let me know if there's anything I can do, or feel free to call me if there's anything that I can do. What do you think about that?
Oh, I like it. There's a I highly recommend it. It's called Just Listen. It's by a guy named Mark Goldstein. Follow him on Facebook. And I haven't gone back and read his article on this, but he wrote an article on suicide. And it was basically that, you don't commit suicide because you're depressed, is I think kind of his line of thinking. He's a psychologist. He works on communication on the brain level. So we have the reptilian brain, the lower function brain, and that sort of thing. And so he communicates in that direction. And the book is about how to communicate on that. So he's also like a FBI negotiator. Okay. So he'll be called into hostage situations and that sort of thing. So the book starts off, and I may have told this story before, but the book starts off with a guy as an example. So guy's in a mall parking lot, having some sort of episode. He's got his gun with him. He's threatened to kill himself in the parking lot. He's locked in the car, but then it's also a public place, and you've got this guy with the guns. The SWAT team's there, and everybody's there. And they called in Mark to do the negotiation, right? Basically talk him down. So he walked up to him, and I'm paraphrasing. It's been a long time since I've read the book, but the idea is he walks up and basically says, "Man, your life sucks." I mean, seriously, it sucks. And he said he could hear the SWAT guys on his earpiece going like, "What are you doing? You're gonna." And he was like, "You probably are like, of anybody here, have the worst life." That's what I would think looking at you right now. And by doing that, by acknowledging that, which I think is what you're going for, that starts getting the processes in the brain to start working again. Because when a person is in this mode, there's some brain science, neuroscience kind of stuff that they've done a lot of research on that doesn't let the higher functioning ability of your brain isn't working. So it's all reactionary, it's all emotional, it's all fight or flight, it's all synaptic, I think is what they call it, or sympathetic. I think it's sympathetic, which is it's just reactionary. Right? Yeah. My life is so bad, this is the only thing I can do. It's not, let's give it a second and think about it. Yeah. But you can't say that. You have to get them out of that mode, and by acknowledging what's going on, there's a trigger that happens in the brain that actually lets you think of it. So I think reaching out and saying, what can I do to help is a great way to do it. I think the other thing rather than, thoughts and prayers are good on us. I think you're right. I think it's good for us to do that it's not helpful to necessarily say that unless you're going to do something else, right?
Yeah.
I think the acknowledgement of the situation is always helpful. So you see that comment, and if the comment is, that is a really, really bad day, and I'm sure things are really hard for you right now. I'm here. Tell me what I can do to help. Not, can I help, or give me a call if I can help. It's, you be very specific, right? What's the thing that you can do?
I would take one step further in that let's look for opportunity. Let's look for what we can do for that person, and let's reach out to that person and say, I will, I'm going to do this for you. Not, I want to do this for you. I'm going to do this for you.
Right.
And I don't know what that is because every situation is different. But just to follow the story out to the end, I saw one of my friends was having a very hard time. He's in Florida. He needs to get back home. He doesn't have the means to get back home. So I looked for bus ticket fares for from where he is back to Louisiana, and it was like $200.
Right.
And I sent him a text, and I'm like, I'm going to buy you a bus ticket to come back home. And when this guy calls me, I haven't talked to him in 30 years, and he's just like, what did you just do?
Yep.
And I don't know, and maybe it doesn't go anywhere because through the conversation, it's like, well, I can't really just pick up and leave. I still gave him the money anyway. But that's the deal. It was like, was that a good investment? Was that a bad investment? Was that a knee-jerk reaction? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows the answer to all that? But I know that for me, I was in a position to offer some type of help to this person who was going through a very hard time. And it was very evident from the things that I had seen on what he had been posting. And I had the ability to do something.
Yeah.
So instead of like saying, hey, I'm here for you, let me know what I can do to help, or how can I help, or whatever, I thought of something specific that I could do. And it's like when you're around in the community, like nobody asked me when we flooded, how can I help?
Right.
Nobody did.
Yep.
You know why? Because they were here. Yeah. They just showed up.
Yeah.
With gloves and hammers and their coveralls, if you will. They just showed up.
Yep.
So it was like and I think that all the tragedies that we go through in our lives, like especially like whenever you lose a loved one, that's one of the first things that you'll hear.
Yeah.
Praying for you.
Yep.
I'm here for you if you need me.
Right.
People generally don't go out of their way to ask for help in those situations. So think of something that you can do. I'm going to cook a meal for you. So just like, contact them and saying, hey, on Friday, I'm going to cook a meal for you.
Right.
Do you have a preference?
Yep.
Do you have any food allergies or something like that? And then that way you're actually getting some concrete stuff to help somebody through a tough situation.
Well, and I would say on that point, the social media is a two-edged sword. It lets us see these sort of things that are going on, but it makes it very much a separation from reality. You couldn't separate reality from Harvey. We weren't watching it through a screen. Folks outside of the country were watching it through a screen, and at that point, they're more limited in terms of the help that they can offer. So the comments and the things, at some point that's the level of what they can do in terms of the offer. But to your point,
and those are strangers.
In some cases, it was right. In some cases, I think to your point though is to break through that wall is the trick, right? Then that you've almost kind of touched on a way to fix a lot of this social media world is by how many likes, posts, hearts, comments, or whatever did that friend have that every one of those people could have done something, tangible. And if even a few had done something tangible, then that changes things a lot, and it breaks that wall down. And it goes even to we've gotten, I think, way off the suicide topic, but what's the point of social media in the first place? what is really the purpose of that? I use it basically as a news feed now, and it's great because the algorithms only show me what I want to see, so I don't have to have another opinion, which is awesome. I'm joking, but for the standpoint, I know you've got friends that go. I just joined Facebook a couple years ago, but your friends go way back. Now, what's the purpose of having that connection still? And is what you just said, right? That's what it's. That was the original. I don't know what the original intent was, but that was the way it was presented. Right, it's like you can keep touch with grandma and grandpa. They can
see the kids.
They can see the kids. When you go to a restaurant, they know if you're having a hard time, you can put it out there.
Yeah.
I think that's where it gets to be very beneficial and powerful. But it has to spur some sort of action. It can't just be people watching, because then it's effectively a social zoo. Yeah. Right. You're just walking through a zoo, looking at all these different cages of all the families that your Facebook friends with without actually interacting with them, and never having any sort of experience of help. Yeah. So I think that's good. I think the suicide especially, but then also the schools here after they had the Santa Fe shooting, I know they did a big security push, because that's the other thing, like you're saying, is again it's a psychological thing where it's usually about 10 days after, it's in that 10-day window where something happens and there's a copycat or there's somebody else that was just on the edge that this is enough, just like you're saying, to push them over, right? Everybody's holding a rock in their hand, but it takes one person to throw it, and then suddenly it's okay, kind of thing. And so that's really, I think, for us as well, is when something like this happens, really keep that in mind and really keep a close eye on things that are going on with your family, things that are going on with your friends. It's a good opportunity to check in if you have people in your life you need to check in on and that sort of thing. But it's that window. And I remember there was I was a freshman in high school, and there was a senior, I didn't know him, had committed suicide our freshman year. And, as a freshman, you just, everything's kind of crazy in high school anyway. And it really hit me hard, and kind of to the same sort of copycat kind of level where you're like, oh man, this is, it just kind of threw me for a loop in a strange way, and I just talked to my mom about it. It was no big thing. But there is something there that we see these things, and, you need to keep an eye on the situation around you, especially, school shootings and that sort of thing, because you don't want that to be the push for somebody else. On the kids side of things, I know Anthony, I'm pretty sure he had a kid, and I know Kate Spade had a daughter. And so, we talked about that a little bit too in our family when that happened, is that, what can be so destructive in someone's life that they're at this point when they have souls and children that they're leaving behind. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard to kind of fathom and put our heads around. Yeah. And so obviously we're not suicide counselors or anything else. But I would think that there's some way through that, to help people see what the importance of what they're leaving behind.
And I think the call to action for all of us, Catholic dads and just people in general, is that. So we talked about it in it was one of your topics on the podcast a couple of podcasts ago. And we're talking about we want to be noticed. People want to be noticed, and it's and I'm not saying that they're doing this for attention, but what I'm saying is notice people. Yeah. So if you go through your day, so every day, here's your call to action for all the Catholic dads or anybody listening. Mm-hmm. Go through the day to day and notice people, and acknowledge them. Not to just say that by you acknowledging them, you're going to sprinkle this magic happy dust on them, mm-hmm. but maybe through your acknowledgement of the person that you pass in the lunchroom or break room, mm-hmm. or on the street, or the child that's sitting in the couch when you get home from work. Mm-hmm. Maybe just by you noticing them, engaging in a conversation with them, you can ascertain that something might be going on in their life that they need somebody to talk to, and just be attentive to that and just talk. Because, people do want to be noticed. Yep. And let's notice them, and let's have some meaningful conversations to where you're listening and not just waiting for your turn to talk, and understand what's going on in their life. And then just figure out some type of a concrete way that you could, offer assistance to get them through that hard time, if they are getting through a hard time.
Absolutely.
And it's very, it's a deep, maybe teenagers aren't going to want to talk about it, especially if it's something that happens like at their school or with one of their friends, it could be very difficult. I mean, thankfully, we haven't had to deal with that personalized, level of it. Right now, it's just like these are happening out there in the world. But
and I think there's we've had some tragedies here in Kingwood, with children that have done that, and those always just rock everybody's boat. And then there is a broader topic here of and I always go back. I don't remember the name of the book. I remember reading it when I was in middle school. It was kind of a cool book. It was about this girl that was she has an accident. She's paralyzed, and it was a science fiction book. And they do some sort of brain surgery where they reprint her DNA into a chimpanzee, and so her brain gets rebuilt in the chimpanzee. So she gets this like chimpanzee body, and so it's this girl's perspective. I know it sounds crazy, but it's this girl's perspective of kind of her new body and how to live as a chimpanzee. And as the story goes on, she ends up not being able to. There's still plenty of chimpanzee there, so she ends up not being able to kind of handle it in the modern world, and so she ends up going to like a nature reserve where she ends up living with the other chimpanzees and the other people that are going through this process. It was very strange, right?
It sounds like Tusk.
It was, which I don't know
which
what that
is. Which is a horrible movie. I want my 2 hours of my life back, Kevin Smith.
So I haven't seen it, so that's good. But it was in our middle school library, so it was one of those books that I picked up when I was in middle school. But one of it was like a social commentary, and one of the themes that's going through this story is that she's kind of recognizing the natural world by being the chimpanzee and rejecting the modern and all that sort of stuff, and so she goes through this process of like peeling off her modern sensibilities as she goes through the book. But there's a statement in there, like, and I don't remember if she's watching the news with her parents or something about, and it's a newscast about an increase in mass suicides and what are we going to do about it. And the story was another like 20 people walked into the surf off of Long Beach today and did it together. And that was like what this author, that was where he was seeing society was going in his world that he had created. And that's always stuck with me for whatever reason. All these things are kind of weird how they stick to you. But you almost wonder if we're moving to that level, right? Where we've so completely decoupled what it means to be a human being in the faith and our souls. We've devalued masculinity. We've, in a sense,
devalued life.
You've devalued life. You've devalued femininity, and you've created a world where we're getting to where, where's this sounds strange, but with all the automation, with all the things that we're doing, we're going to be getting to a point where people are literally going to be looking at the rest of their life going, there's nothing here for me to do. Like what am I going to do? I can't have meaningful relationships because I've been connected to social media in since I was 2 years old. I don't have, as a man, there's no direction for me, lost in a drift. And are we going in that direction? How do we as Catholic dads make sure that we push back on that?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just weird. Anytime there's any of these suicides, I always think back to that book, and I don't remember the name of it. If anybody's out there and you want to leave it in the comments, that'd be great. Yeah. But it was striking. And, it becomes like a cool thing. That's what we don't want either, right? All the celebrities that are doing it, you don't want it to be a thing. You never want to show it as an out. You never want to show it as a solution. Yeah. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on it.
Tough thoughts and tough topic. But just encourage everybody to, be engaged with those around you and enter those conversations and notice people around you. Thanks for hanging with us, and we hope you have a great day today. Find us out there on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We actually have a podcast page, but it's O'Brien Online. It's really long, but shout out to Chris O'Brien for still hosting our podcast. And drop some notes in the comments if you want to have any type of a topic. Just let us know. I don't know how these mics are pretty sensitive, so I'm pretty sure they picked up my baby crying in the background. So it's time to shut her down.
Sounds good. Well, God bless y'all. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
St. Joseph,
pray for us.